show and to tell you how delighted we are to have you and to talk about the topic, the story of the Black Panther Party. But before, Dr. Farley, we get involved with the Black Panther Party, let's talk about Jonathan Farley and have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the things that were important and eventually leading you to Vanderbilt University and the Department of Mathematics. And then we'll talk about the Black Panther Party.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here, but I want to correct something. I'm not a Black Panther, even though I'm dressed in black.
Okay.
I was born in 1970 in upstate New York, Rochester. And I went to Harvard University, and I graduated from there summa cum laude in 1991 in mathematics. And I hate talking about myself, but I guess that's what I'm here for.
That's
so at that time, I got a Marshall Scholarship to go to Oxford University. And there I also studied mathematics, and I got my doctorate, they call it a DPhil, in 1995. But not, before that, I actually got Oxford's highest mathematics awards, the Senior Mathematical Prize and the Johnson Prize for my research. And not only was it a good honor, they gave me a check for £1,000 too.
Okay,
so
which is a lot of money. Okay, very good.
And after that, in 1995, I moved to Berkeley, California, where I was a fellow, a research fellow of the Mathematical Sciences Research Institute. They call it MISRI for the acronym.
Okay.
And I was there from 95 to 97, and I loved the environment. I did mathematics, but in addition to the mathematics that I did, that's where I first met some of the leaders, the former leaders of the Black Panther Party. David Hilliard, who was the chief of staff, Frederica Newton, who was the widow of one of the co-founders of the party. And I also campaigned to defend affirmative action, fighting Proposition 209, and so on. And this is something which has really motivated me. I love mathematics. I'm really engaged by it, and I happen to be lucky enough to have some facility with it. Last year, I solved a problem that was open for 34 years. It remained unsolved for 34 years. And just this January, I solved another problem which had remained unsolved for 25 years. It was posed by some big shot professor in MIT. But in addition to academic excellence, something my whole family believes in, from my parents, who are university professors, my father, an economist, my mother, an African-American historian at the State University of New York College at Brockport, and also a regent of the state of New York, they told me that I must also be committed to serving the people, the uplifting of the race. And so in addition to giving talks on how to get straight A's to college students at Berkeley or at Vanderbilt or at Fisk, or giving talks on how to get into a PhD program, I also feel it's important to actually tutor kids, work in the community, all these activities which the Black Panther Party actually symbolized and embodied.
That is, in a real sense, the story of the Black. Let's talk about the story. I mean, how would you introduce people who might not be familiar with the Black Panther Party over the next few minutes that we have during this segment? How would you introduce them by telling them in a sort of a brief form the story of the Black Panther Party?
Well, the story is an amazing one, but first I have to start by saying that a lot of people have misconceptions about the Black Panther Party. There are many myths surrounding the Black Panther Party. People are scared of them. They think they're associated with violence, radical ideas. In actuality, as I'll get into later, a lot of these stories were really just propaganda designed to discredit the Black Panthers. In reality, the Black Panther Party that we know about started in October 1966 in the city of Oakland, California, by two part-time college students, Bobby Seale and Huey Newton. And they had the daring, the audacity, and the vision to think, we are looking at the conditions, the awful conditions that black people face in this country, and we have the ability to change it just by thinking and by acting. And what they did was, people associate the Black Panthers with guns and violence, but in reality they were just like a civil liberties organization like the ACLU. They started off by monitoring the police to prevent acts of police brutality like we've seen in New York City with the Ghanaian immigrant Diallo. So they would watch the police. They would travel, follow police cars, and whenever they stopped a citizen, the Black Panthers would get out of their cars with their law books and observe the proceedings from a safe distance. And if there are any violations, they made sure to make sure and step in.
Now that was a sort of an intimidating factor as far as the police were concerned. Would you say that?
They weren't trying to intimidate the police.
I know, but I mean, how did the police?
The police, because you have to imagine, this is 1966, and so you have police departments populated by people like our friend Mark Furman, right, who obviously obviously wouldn't want that kind of so-called interference, even though it's perfectly legal. This is a key point that a lot of people miss. The Black Panther Party, I like to say, they broke fewer laws than Martin Luther King, because Huey Newton, he was a self-taught lawyer, he was a genius, and he made sure that everyone read all the law books so that the police actually wouldn't have any excuses to crack down on them. But the police, they didn't like the sort of interference with what they were doing, and this led in 1967 to the introduction of a law by a local legislator in California, Don Mulford, to ban the activities that the Black Panthers are actually doing.
Now, the party was not only connected in California, but in Chicago. There were also branches. Was it a national party, or what's the...
It started off just as a local party in Oakland, California, but then on May 2nd, 1967, when this law by Don Mulford was being passed in the legislature, Bobby Seale led a group of 30 Panthers, 6 women and 24 men, to the local legislature to actually protest the passing of this bill. Huey Newton was at home because his mother wanted him to wash her dishes. But then what happened was there are all these television cameras there. Ronald Reagan, the governor of California, he was there. And all this coverage of this group, which had been unknown outside of the San Francisco Bay Area before then, came about. And then after that, in the summer of 1967, all sorts of people were calling in. They wanted to form their own chapters because they saw the good that the party was actually doing. And so that's where you got branches in New York City, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, and all across the country, and indeed international chapters as well.
You know, when you talk about that party, how did that party relate to some of the things that were going on in reference to civil rights at that particular time?
Well, even though that part of the history is often referred to as the Black Power movement as opposed to the Civil Rights movement, in reality, what the Black Panthers are trying to do is a continuation of the efforts of people like Malcolm X, even Martin Luther King. They may have had different methods, but they had identical goals. Both were concerned about the war in Vietnam and ending that. Both were concerned about the economic improvement of the conditions facing Black people. Both were concerned about the violence in American cities. The Black Panthers, contrary to the myth, actually tried to prevent riots because they saw that riots were just an excuse for police who were so minded to actually go in and arrest people, hurt people, shoot people. They actually just wanted Black people to build up their communities rather than tear them down.
Now, Bobby Seals, I think we saw him quite recently on another show. What's his position now? Is he still a part of the Panther organization, or is he still active in the organization?
Well, officially the Black Panther Party disbanded in 1980, and its heyday was really from 1966 to 1971. That's when Bobby Seale wrote the book Seize the Time, facing numerous trials just for advocating his political beliefs. And what I want to say about the Black Panther Party, as we know it, regardless of what happened later, that the Black Panther Party, it was more than just watching the police. It was a service organization for the people. So they had free breakfast for children programs. They had free health clinics. They were the first group, actually, to identify that sickle cell anemia was a problem for people of African descent. And they were the first people to recognize as a major problem. Or projects like Head Start actually got their start from the programs of the Black Panther Party. You talk about Chicago, the Black Panther leader Fred Hampton, 21 years old, actually started the Rainbow Coalition, and Jesse Jackson took the name. But they were interested in uplifting all people, Black people, brown people, yellow people, red people, even white people, and forming a more humane society.
And and of course, we've got about 30 seconds here, Dr. Farley, before we have our first commercial break today. But essentially, that's the information we wanted in reference to this party. And you would date it from the 1960s down through the 1980s and say that for the most part, there are no real active chapters of that organization today?
No, there are not. Although there are the new Black Panthers, but they're different.
So in a real sense, we're really talking about an item that is already set in history in a real sense. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
And we'll be back with our audience after this first commercial break. Who is in the